Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Mr. Productivity Podcast. Hey, before I get into my guests, hey, head on over to MrProductivity.com, M-I-S-T-E-R, MrProductivity.com. Sign up for a free email newsletter and get a free 45-minute call with me. It's insane. But enough of that. JC, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks so much, Mark. Glad to be here.
So I have had the opportunity to have a call with you before we did this interview, and I was blown away with your value. But there may be some people watching or listening to the show who never heard you. So in about 20 seconds, who are you?
Yeah, great. Thanks so much. Yeah, so I have a background in business ownership, and I've done corporate America. I've been a coach since 2005. That was my first start into business ownership. I now live in Florida. I've got 4 boys, 8 and under, and I'm a stay-at-home dad and a home-based business entrepreneur.
Nice. The 2005, that's something you and I have in common. So I was fired from my corporate job in 2005, and I made a decision. Do I go back and get another real job, or do I try this thing called entrepreneurship? And here we are in 2024. And JC, I am very concerned that had I not been fired, would I still be there? Would I have a podcast? Because I was miserable at that job. Now, I'm not making billions of dollars. I'm not Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos, but I can tell you the freedom of being in my own home, doing this interview with you. My daughters are 30 and 26. They're grown and out of the house, but the freedom that entrepreneurship gives us, I think it's second to none.
I couldn't agree more. I did corporate America to glean some experience. I didn't need the job. I had a business always on the side. I've always believed in, once I learned about business ownership and started making money, I dropped out of college and never looked back. It wasn't my initial desire, but it worked out the way it was supposed to. And so I've always just loved doing something from home. So when I'd come home from the job, I'd be working on my business, whether it was for a half hour or 5 hours. I've gone through different transitional seasons where maybe it's just a little bit of consistency. But in 2016, I decided I'm never going to look back, and had my first kid and decided to walk away from corporate America. At the time, I was the COO of a health company we helped grow from 60 million to 180 million a year. And it was a great experience, but I knew that I wanted to have the opportunity to spend the time that I had on this earth the way I wanted to spend it.
I love that. And I can tell you, I've been an entrepreneur since 2005, as I said, and a lot of people, I get a couple of reactions. Number one, people go, wow, you're so lucky. No, it's not lucky. I work 7 days a week, not because I have to, because I want to. The other thing reaction I get from other people, they'll say, I'll tell them I'm a big football fan. And when I say football, European football, the real football, we call it soccer here in the States. When one of my teams will be playing at 2:00 in the afternoon, like, how can you watch that game? I'm like, I work for myself, so I structure my day. If my team's playing at 2:00 in the afternoon, I work really hard before the game, so I'm still getting stuff done, and I can watch the game live because I have the freedom working for myself. I'm sure with 4 boys, you said under the age of 8, you have the freedom to go to their games and hang out with them and do things with them and still.
Oh yeah, we do Busch Gardens in the middle of the week. So we have we'll go to the Busch Gardens in the middle of the week and take them there, and I get the opportunity to go to the park with them during the week. And I've gone through transitional seasons as we went from 1 kid to 2 to 3 to 4, where I would be helping more during the day. And I actually would work, because I own my own business, I'd work at night when everybody else was sleeping. Babies sleep a lot. There was a good couple years where I'd work from 6:00 at night until midnight, 2:00 in the morning. And I'm a night owl, so I prefer that. But now I'm back to waking up at early morning and going to the gym and whatnot. But that's the freedom that I have as a home-based business entrepreneur.
One of the things I hear from people is, you're lucky, Mark, because your wife and you are empty nesters and you control your schedule. I can't. And I'm like, first of all, let's knock off the excuses. And I'm like, how old are your kids? Oh, my kids are 3 and 4 years old. Okay, what time do they go to bed? Oh, about 7:00. What time do you go to bed? Oh, midnight. Okay, we have a problem. Because if you're staying up watching sports, watching Netflix for 5 hours, I think you're wasting time. Now, if you're working on your side hustle after your kids go to bed, I know Pat Flynn shares this all the time, where when his kids were little, he put his kids to bed and then he would work on his business. And so you can either do that before the kids wake up in the morning or, to your point, after they go to bed at night. But I don't like people who go to the play excuses, play the blame game. There's a way. If you truly want to run a business, start a side hustle, there's a way to do it. If you really want to, you won't make excuses.
100%. And I've worked with people. I worked with a firefighter in Texas that his wife was in college. She wanted to go back to school and get her degree, and he needed to make more money. So he started a moving company. Firefighters have a specific schedule where they work 2-3 days on and then they get time off, but it's part-time. And he grew his business in the first 12 months to $280,000 in revenue, which is way more than he was making at the fire department. But it was his desire and his consistent effort in the time that he did have available to build that business. And some people, they only have I've built side businesses with 3 hours a week. And if you're consistent long enough, you will generate an income.
So I can imagine people are listening to this episode and they're like, okay, I get it. JC, you get to work from home, get to hang out with your kids. Mark gets to work from home. But is this something I can do? And I know the answer to this. It is possible. But what do you say to people when they say, JC, must be nice. You get to do that. You used to work in the corporate world. Now you work from home. So there is a way to transition. What would you say to someone like that?
Yeah, take an account for your time. That's the biggest thing. I've worked with thousands of people that were starting a business, either whether from home or even brick and mortar, while working a job. And the first thing you have to do is take an account of your time and figure out, when do you have time? And if you've got 4 kids like I have, you may not have an extra 30 hours a week. You may only have 5 to 10 hours a week. And so once you've taken account of your time, then you need to go find something that fits within the mold that you can do during the time that you do have. And that might take you some time. It might take you some time to figure out what you want to do. You might have to meet with some home-based business opportunities and go through 3 or 4. You might have to go talk to some companies that allow you to resell their products or services and go through 2, 3, or 4 to find that thing that you're passionate about, that you can get excited about when you do get off of work, when you are done with the kids, when everybody goes to sleep and you're just spending maybe an hour or 2 a day, or maybe 4 or 5 hours on the weekend. You just got to take an account for your time and then find that thing that's going to be a fit and not be in such a rush, even if your financial situation says, I'm running out of money before month. Even if that's the case, just take your time with it and figure out the thing that's going to work. But taking account for your time is the first thing you have to do. And that's at a granular level. If you take an account for your time, you will find that you do have time to do something else.
Several years ago, I had a lady from Australia reach out to me as a coach, and they said that they want to be a coder. I'm like, that's great. We need coders in this world, right? Coders are a pretty big deal. And I said, how often do you code? She goes, oh, I don't code yet. I'm like, okay, those are kids who are self-taught and all they do in their free time is code. So if you tell me you want to be a coder and you're not coding at all, you probably don't want to be a coder. I have another friend who is a friend and a client, believe it or not, and they want to be a writer. I'm like, dude, you're not writing every day. You should be writing every day. If you truly want to be a writer, you don't write whenever the mood strikes you. If you look at the biggest, most prolific writers today or in the past, they were writing every day. That's what you want to do. I'm a productivity coach. I'm doing things every day to help people be more productive. Do you agree with that?
100%. And I had some time that I was fortunate enough to spend around John Maxwell. And he talked about how he desired to be a writer. And he started writing when he was in his teens. And he has all these file cabinets in his office still that go way back to when he was in high school even. He's been writing consistently. And I don't know how many books he's written, but I think it's over 50, maybe even over 80. He's got a lot of books. And so you're exactly right. If you're not crafting the skill, and if you're starting a business, oftentimes sales is the thing that you need to get better at. There's plenty of free materials online, YouTube, even TikTok. There's just free information out there where you can hone your skill and then practice with your friends and family. And some people are nervous about doing that, but that's the best place to start. Let them tear you apart a little bit so you can get better.
I am so jealous of John C. Maxwell's voice. His voice is, oh my goodness. People say I have a good voice, but his voice is awesome. You know what I'm talking about?
He said, hi, my name is John. I'm your friend. Yep.
Good impression. And you mentioned YouTube and Google. That's how I started this podcast. So I was inspired from Gary Vaynerchuk. He said something in the spring of 2017 about the future is voice and audio, and everyone needs to have a podcast. And I went to Google and I typed in those words. How do I start a podcast? And here we are approaching 1,300 episodes. So to your point, the information's out there. So you may not be able to hire a coach or go to a conference or even buy a course, but there is enough information to get you started. There's books, there's webinars, there's podcasts. So again, I'll say this for the fourth time on the show. Stop making excuses. If you truly want that dream you have in your head, it's not going to come to you and knock on your front door and say, hey, I'm your dream. Here I am. You're going to have to do work. And I believe that when you work, when you're willing to put the effort into it, opportunities start showing up. It's like by magic. But if you're just sitting there hoping magic's going to happen, you're going to be waiting a very long time.
Absolutely. And I tell people you have to get the thoughts out of your head and put it on paper. Or I like to put it on digital, right? I have a remarkable tablet. I like writing on that. It feels like paper. But you have to get it out of your head and write it down. And that's when things will start to move in the direction that you should be moving in, right? So for example, with access to AI, you can go to ChatGPT for free, write down your thoughts into ChatGPT, an AI technology that has access to tons of code, tons of information online. And even if you use the free version, if you say, I want to start a business from home, how should I get started? Ask me some questions to help me get started. It will tell you everything you need. But even with Google, which is all we had, right? All we had was Google. Getting started with just typing it into Google. How do I start this? There's enough information online for someone to start a business right now without spending any money, hiring a program or going through a course. You can get free information online to help you start that if you don't have the resources to help hire somebody.
A lot of people are afraid of AI. I was unsure about it when it first came out. Now it is a tool for me. It is a productivity tool. So what I'll do, what my wife will do with this episode when we're done, she actually transcribes it I use Squadcast, which is connected to the script. She'll take the transcript, she'll plug it into, I use Claude AI, I think it's better than ChatGPT, and it'll say, okay, analyze this transcript and give me 2 or 3 SEO friendly titles. Then take the transcript and make a readable blog post with subheads. And it does a great job at that. So instead of us posting a transcript, nobody reads transcripts. Please convert it into a blog post. It'll do the meta description for my email. It'll create podcast descriptions. So I tell people AI is, first of all, it's not going away. It's like social media. It's not a fad. It's going to be here. But I think it's a tool, and I think you shouldn't be afraid of AI. I think you should embrace AI. One of the things I like to do is I got threads for all my prospects in Claude AI. And so every time I communicate with a client, via DM or WhatsApp or email, it's all in the same thread. And I'll say, okay, JC hasn't responded yet. Create another DM. And it'll look at everything it's already created for me, and it's a fresh DM or a fresh email. Now, I could have done that, but AI saving me the time. It's not creating anything like grabbing things at random. It's looking at what it's already said. And of course, I gave it the first prompt, which started the whole thread. And so I love AI. What do you say to people who are, regardless of their age, because this podcast is geared toward leaders of small to medium-sized businesses who are afraid of AI and they don't understand it's not something to be feared, it's something to be embraced as a tool.
Yeah, I would say go to YouTube, watch some videos, right? If the number 2 search engine in the world, YouTube, and go and search the questions you have about AI. And whether you're 80 years old or you're 8 years old, you can go and find someone who is going to help you on YouTube. There's enough content on there to help you figure out what you're going to do. Just to give you another example of AI, like if you take an account for your time and you put all that information into an AI tool and say, help me find time in my calendar to build a business, it will help you identify, hey, I want to build a business for 3 hours a week. Where should I put that time at? It's incredible because it's going to help you think through things really the way a coach might, but with some urgency and way faster than it would take you to wait and work through a coach that's going to help you take that whole thing and identify it.
I agree with you. And I once heard Gary Vaynerchuk say, if you want to learn something, AI, crypto, real estate, go to YouTube and spend 20 hours watching the top ranked video about that topic. And you will have a strong base of information. Don't watch one video. Don't watch a 30-second short. Dive deep. And the information is free on YouTube. And so, again, for the 7,000th time, stop making excuses. If you truly want to live a great life, the information's out there. But as you and I both know, JC, it's not just the information. It's taking that information and actually taking action.
100%. And you keep saying it, stop making excuses, right? It just takes a decision to finally say to yourself, I'm not going to keep making excuses. I'm going to take some action. And that action could very well be just going to YouTube and doing some research and watching some videos. How much longer do you need to wait in order to take that first step? Even if you find out that it's something you don't want to do, you might decide business ownership isn't what you want to do. But at least you could stop thinking about it, losing sleep over it, wondering, is it something that you could do? Because there are plenty of people that are in jobs right now and they're not making enough to be what they might to be considered successful. They're not getting enough time with their family that they want to have, but they have to be at that job out of necessity. And they're just going to constantly be stuck because they're excuse makers and they haven't put that line in the sand and said, let me stop making excuses. Let me just take some action. And maybe listening to this podcast, maybe this is the first podcast you've listened to, and this is a little bit of action. You need to pat yourself on the back for that, because instead of listening to watching random videos on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, all these social media tools that keep us so distracted, just like life gets distracting, life provides us an abundance of excuses. But it just takes one decision to just walk over that line and say, let me be an action taker, and let me just incrementally take some time to put some action into place, learn some things, and decide if that's something I want to move forward with.
One of my favorite quotes is by Steve Harvey. He says, if you ever want to become successful, you got to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I have a client of mine who wants to go out on their own. They want to leave the corporate world. And I'm like, that's great, but you got to stop talking about it. You need to say, I'm quitting December 31st of this year. Is it scary? Heck yeah, it's scary. But if you keep saying, yeah, someday you'll be 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 and dead. Okay. You've got to make a decision and say, the first of next year, I will be working 100% myself, because what that's going to force you to do is stop dabbling, like putting your toe in the water. Now you're jumping in. You're going to take it more seriously. But if you've got the security of a job, now I'm not saying quit your job, but if you really want to leave your job, you got to do more than just, I don't know the phrase I'm using, dipping your toe in the ocean or whatever. You got to make a bold decision. I think when you make that bold decision, you're more likely to take the action where you can quit your job.
Absolutely. And you talk about it. You said you got to put a goal in place, even if it's 2 years down the line. I remember in 2019, I went to an event out in Arizona. And at that event, I decided that I was going to start an insurance agency. And I didn't do it right away, but I knew that I wanted to just have that as an offering to my consulting clients, because I really believe in key man insurance, right? As a business owner, you should be protecting the business if you want to leave a legacy. And so I put a plan in place. And I decided to shut that business down, full disclosure. But 2 years later, I started that business and we made money in that business. But I did decide to shut that business down because that sometimes you just don't have fun with something and you decide you don't want to do it anymore, which is what I did. But I still put that plan in place, and it might take you some time. I just got off a call with a friend I caught up with that I haven't talked to in 4 years. And she said, I would like to retire my husband in 2 years. And I said, what would it take? And she told me exactly what it would take. And I said, then 2 years is plenty of time. And you set that goal. 2 years might seem like a lot of time, but it's going to go faster than we know. So whether it's going to quit my job in December or this time next year, end of 2025, whatever it might be, to your point, Mark, you got to set something in stone and then reverse engineer it and start doing the work to get there.
You just said the F word that is allowed on my show, fun. I think a lot of people go through life, and I remember there was a commercial on the product of the 1960s, and it was Dunkin' Donuts, and the guy used to wake up and go, time to make the donuts. You don't want to have that attitude. I tell people when they say, hey, I want to start a podcast, any advice? Have fun. I want to start a business. Have fun. Because if you're doing it for the money, if you're doing it for the fame, if you're doing it because fill in the blank, it's not, the chances of it succeeding are going to be really small. I think you need to have fun. You get one shot at this thing called life. And if you're just focused on the money, I think you're making a huge mistake. So I think no matter what you do, if it's in your control, you should try to have fun. That's why I identify as Tigger from Winnie the Pooh. I am that annoyingly optimistically that happy, because I realize when I wake up in the morning, I got another day. But some people wake up, and there's two ways to say this. It's another day, or it's another day. Same words, but the way you feel about it is different. And you may not be able to quit your job today, but I want you to wake up and say, you know what? I don't really like my job, don't like the commute, don't like the boss, whatever. But you can say, I woke up today. Because if you start your day thinking that, you're going to probably have a more productive day, because happy people are productive people, than if you woke up and go, oh, I go back to work again today. I know you agree with me on that.
100%. And I can tell you, I've hired so many coaches in my career and spent a lot of money on events and being around people that I needed to be around in order to get to where I'm at. And you just said it, right? Productive people are happy, and productivity doesn't necessarily mean more money. Doesn't necessarily mean that. You might be happy. You might be happy with the money you're making, but you're not happy with your job. Hiring a productivity coach can actually help you get happy with your job. I fully believe that. I tell people now, when I worked in DC and I used to have to travel into DC, I tell you now that it was miserable. I would never go do it again. But when I was traveling into DC, I used to say, I get to read a book on the metro, right? I drove a few times. It wasn't worth driving. It was actually faster to take the metro. And so I'd ride the metro and I'd say, I get to read a book. And I went through so many books and listened to audio tapes and trainings. And I got to meet interesting people on the train, even though a lot of people don't want to talk on the train. But I used it as an opportunity to remain optimistic and say, there's time for me to educate myself on the way there and the way home. And then because I was building a business on the side while I was working in a corporate job, I was excited to get home and get to work with my wife. So you find the silver lining in what it is you're doing. And oftentimes when people set that goal, like you said earlier, if you set a goal and say, all right, by the end of 2025, I'm going to leave my job. How much money do I need in the bank in order to have 12 months of expenses in the bank? Maybe you don't need 12, but just 12. Let's say it's 12 months in the bank. How much money do I need to get there? And then I need to figure out where I can work another business or a side hustle or something part-time that's going to help me achieve this by the end of 2025. You will find, and this is what I find with people that I work with in the past that have had corporate jobs or their W2. I've worked with people that sold cars 6 and 7 days a week, and they still found time to work their side hustle. I had a client that went from selling cars. He built an insurance practice, and he successfully built it part-time, saved up enough money so he could go launch full-time. And when he was at his job, he was excited about being there. He just said, you know what? I'm not going to be doing this forever, but I'm going to find the fun in it while I'm here.
Get to instead of I have to. Because if you have a job, you get to. Because you could be unemployed, you could be homeless, you could be under a bridge someplace, but you get to go to work. You get to pay your taxes. I know we don't like to pay our taxes, but if you didn't have an income, you wouldn't pay taxes. So I want people to tattoo that on their brain. Switch from saying I have to I get to. Now, you could take this to an insane degree and say, I get to pay the speeding ticket. No, you have to pay the speeding ticket. There's a difference there. But getting back to what you said about dreaming, people don't, I think the reason why people don't like to dream is they approach it wrong. They're approaching it too analytical. And I think you should approach your dreams in the beginning emotionally. And dreaming is free. I have a whiteboard back here. I love whiteboarding. If I got dreams or something like that, I just like getting the whiteboard markers and just drawing, because then it brings it to life. A lot of people, they keep it in their head, and your brain doesn't know what to do with it because it can't see it. So whether it's in a journal, on a whiteboard, a chalkboard, your eyes have to see it. Your subconscious mind has to see it, because then it goes, oh, they're really serious about this now.
Yeah, absolutely. That just goes back to writing it down. Take it out of your mind. Even if you're looking for a lost phone, Write it down. Where did I put my phone? Where did I see my phone last? Or a lost controller, which happens often in my household because the kids hide in places, right? But yeah, and also I think people get burned out by the just being let down, right? Where they might have tried something and they say they tried something and they chalk it up to nothing works. That's why I tell people you might need to go through multiple companies or multiple ideas. I've met with thousands of business owners. And in my meetings, I have met with countless people who have and seen them on stage and met them and had an opportunity to speak with people who are worth millions and millions of dollars. And they will all tell you that they've had failures along the way. And the failures are the stepping stones. And the good thing about having a home-based business and doing it part-time is the failures aren't going to be as detrimental as if you were to go invest a lot of money into starting a franchise or something like that. Right? I mean, you may not have those funds, but along the way, you can have some failures of people just telling you're terrible for asking them to buy something from you. That might feel like a failure, but that is the path to succeeding. And so we have to get past our fear of failure and just get back to dreaming. And if you're someone who has been thinking about it again, I used to say, hey, if you've got if there's just a little ember on it, let me blow some life onto that ember for you and say, it is okay to dream. You can look at all the people that made all this money and you might think they were overnight successes, but you have no idea what they went through in their garage, in their ups and downs. You don't know what they went through. And most of us would not be willing to go through the things they went through, which is why they have what they have, because they were willing to do what most people wouldn't so that they could have what most people don't.
I want people to go read about Jeff Bezos. There's an iconic photo of him sitting in some office in New York City late at night, and he had a dream to sell books online. This was at the start of Amazon. He just sold books, and everybody made fun of him. But I believe persistence is power. And now you can buy almost anything on Amazon, and you can get it in most cases same day. And so if people in your life are saying, oh, you're being unrealistic, why are you working so hard? That's a stupid dream. I would argue that you need to spend less time with those people, even if they're your family, your friends, your neighbors. If they are Eeyores, again, going back to Winnie Pooh, you need to spend less time with them, because I can tell you, I hang around a lot of people who are successful. They've never said, oh, how come you don't have a $100 million Spotify contract like Joe Rogan? They're cheering me on. They're not going negative. And so if the people in your inner circle are all negative, you need a new inner circle.
Absolutely. And I believe your net worth is your network. And something that I've said along the way is if you do not have a community, and there are communities in every city of entrepreneurs, and if you have to find one online, I can promise you there are plenty online, especially after the work from home revolution, right? There's been a massive disruptive innovation and people are more comfortable being online and being on Zoom. Go and just network with people and get around people who are going to say, you're doing a great job. Keep consistent. Keep doing what you're doing. And go and ask people, how do I improve? But yeah, you need to get around a community of people who want to see you succeed, instead of what most of us have is communities of people that would rather see us worse off than them, so it makes them feel better.
True. So I want to pivot here just a little bit. I want to know, how does JC stay productive? You got 4 boys under 8. You work from home, but you still have the same 24 hours in a day like everyone else. So what are some of the ways you make sure you're getting what needs to get done? That's a key question I want people to understand. It's not just getting things done, getting what needs to be done. How do you do that?
Great question. So I call it my platinum planning session, right? Just a little phrase I like to call it. And that's what I called it with my clients, is the platinum planning session. Every week, I have a spouse and I have kids. And so every week between Friday and Sunday, I do it on Sunday, we talk about where the family needs me. Right? Where the family needs me. And it's not necessarily like I have to, but what are you guys doing this week? What do you have planned? I want to choose, am I going to go to Busch Gardens with you? Right? So I figure out those things and I follow the Franklin Covey path, which is your rocks, your pebbles, and your rocks, your pebbles, and your sand or your stone. And in that, I calendar code. So I know when I'm going to work for the week, Monday through Friday, or like this week, I'm working Monday through Thursday. and I have my times in my calendar with what I need to do. And so I do it when I show up. And I'm severely ADHD. I'm so easily distracted. I was a procrastinator in school. I was the guy that waited until the night before to write a 10-page essay and study for my test last second. I'd stay up all night. But I always felt like a great procrastinator. And some of you listening to this, you can relate because you waited till the night before also to cram it and then go. And I did that even in college, and I was a straight A student. I graduated with a 3.8 unweighted GPA in high school, and I don't feel like I tried because I was a procrastinator. And I've never had medication for ADHD. This changed my life. It changed my life to work with a productivity coach who helped me identify how to specifically operate my calendar so that I could satisfy my desire to just be distracted every now and then. So I have little flex time built in my calendar where I say, hey, during my flex time, I'm going to get some of my to-dos done, or I'm going to go out and kiss my kids, kiss my wife, wrestle with them for 15 minutes, and then I come back in. And so I got really fierce about protecting my calendar time and not taking on more than I could chew. I remember being in my early 20s, and I got into a little community of people that I met that were business owners, and all of a sudden everybody wanted me to help them move. And so I'd constantly just, oh, sure, I'll help you move like tomorrow. Hey, can you help me move today? And I started to say no. I started to say no more often. And it wasn't that I didn't want to help. It's just, your emergency is not going to become my derailment of my time. And that happens at work oftentimes. Hey, I need you to stay late today. You didn't plan for it. And I have other things planned that I have to do. So I could stay late 3 days from now, but I can't stay late today. Those are things that we get uncomfortable to say. It's uncomfortable to say no, but you have to get protective of your time. And like I said, working with a productivity coach and really hammering in on all the things that I'm doing. How can I get all of this done? And when I show up to that time, if you're ADHD, it's difficult to get into a flow. It is so difficult, but I have to clear the mechanism and say, during this time, I'm just going to be doing a podcast. During this time, I'm just going to be working on my marketing, and I'm not going to do anything else. And I'm going to spend time breaking it into parts. I like the Pomodoro technique, right? I like to work in those little increments of time. And I really appreciate that. And even when I'm doing sales or doing outreach for a client or myself, I work in little chunks of 90 minutes, and I call and I say, I'm going to call 25 people until I'm done. If that takes me 20 minutes or 30, great. And that's how I've managed my time, is just really being intentional about it, because time is something that's not really manageable. It requires intentionality. You really need to just put it into a calendar. And 99% of the people that I talk to, even business owners, they don't work off of a calendar. Throw stuff in. And the uncomfortable thing about that is I can't tell you how many times I've met with a professional who had a successful book of business. Like I remember a guy doing $100 million a year. And he said, JC, I can't tell you what I did last week outside of this one thing. I don't remember.
I've got a saying I've been saying on my podcast for years: tell your time where to go instead of wondering where it went. And a lot of people, when they plan their time, they only plan the real events. They plan coaching calls, webinars, doctor's appointments. You should actually assign a slot for everything you're doing. So if you want to go to Busch Gardens, you shouldn't do it intentionally. I'm going to Busch Gardens. I'm taking the kids out to donuts. I'm taking the kids out to lunch, and be intentional. What I've done recently, I've learned this from Alex Ramosi. He wrote $100 million leads and $100 million offers, is my mornings are labeled as maker time. So from 8 until noon, all I'm doing is working on my business. Why? Because mornings are my prime time. So I used to allow people to book coaching calls and podcast interviews, and what I found happening is I wasn't doing my productive work, because I would work for 45 minutes, hop on a call, try to go back and work for 45 more minutes, and it didn't work. So now I just block off the mornings, and I can tell you that when I wake up, I know I have nothing on my calendar until lunch. And it's really nice to do that. And so I want people to think, if you can, as much you can, set your schedule up where you are having your maker time, your deep work time, when you're in your prime. I don't care if that's morning or mid-afternoon or whatever, because you need to take this time and guard it. A lot of people, to your point, they just, whatever, I'm sure I'll be productive today. And at the end of the day, you ask them what they did, they're like, oh, I did something, I don't know, because they weren't intentional. And here's the thing, to be intentional with your time, doesn't really take that much. Maybe 15 minutes when you're getting started, and after a while it takes 5 minutes. You just sit down and go, okay, what do I want to do tomorrow? It's not that hard. People don't want to do the little things, but as the saying says, W. Clement Stone said, the little hinges move big doors. So gift yourself the time to plan for that 5, 10, 15 minutes at the end of every day. Just review what you didn't get done today, find a spot on it tomorrow or next week, and then you're done. But you can't just plan on hoping to pray.
100%. I couldn't agree more. I remember when I started reading at 19 years old, which sounds funny. I wasn't a self-help book reader at 19, but I started a business and I heard some people talking about some books. And the first book I got was Greatest Salesman in the World by Og Mandino. And I can still remember to this day coming home after swim practice and being so tired. I'd play basketball after swim practice until midnight, and then I'd go home and I'd committed to reading for 10 minutes a day. And I remember standing up against the wall and reading because I knew I'd fall asleep if I had tried to sit down and read. But I don't even know if I retained what I was reading, but I remember how much respect I had for myself and confidence I had in just doing what I said I would do for that little chunk of time, and those little wins along the way in your calendar. Even if you just started out by saying family time, I have family time in my calendar. Even if you just started out by saying, hey, every night we eat dinner at 7:00. So if you just put it in your calendar and said 7 to 8 is family time, you'll feel better about it, knowing that time is protected.
I love that. And people ask me, one of my non-negotiables is to read for an hour every day. People ask me, how do you have time to read? It's on my calendar. It's a non-negotiable. I use an app that I have to actually, when I start reading, I hit the start timer and I hit the stop timer, because the more I read, the more I know. The more I know, I'm a better conversationalist, and the better I can grow my business. I know people are not going to want to hear this, but you cannot get to where you want to go just by consuming content on YouTube or TikTok or Facebook or X or podcast. You actually have to read books, because when you read someone's book, like a Cal Newport book or Robin Sharma, imagine if these people sat down and let's say the book takes you 8 hours to read. If they gave you 8 hours of their time, it would be a lot more than the $20 that you pay for that book. So I look at books as an investment. I don't read books I read fiction books, but I study business and personal development books. I get a highlighter, I get a pen, and I really dive into these books because this author is sharing everything they know. And if you want to get a coaching call with Tony Robbins, it's like $1 million an hour. Or you can buy Awaken the Giant Within for $15 and study the book. So again, we're going to say this for the millionth time. Stop making excuses. Make a list of what is non-negotiable in your life. Because if you don't have non-negotiables, anything's going to take your time.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I first started reading, I heard the same thing. And someone taught me how to read a book to actually ingest it properly. Right. So I would read chapter 1 and I'd put just the top level highlights. And before I'd read I'd go and read the highlights from chapter 1. And what's funny about this is I also started putting in my calendar application. So if I learned something from the book, something that I took away from the book, and I really wanted to figure out how to implement it into my life or into my business, like the 4-Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss or Atomic Habits by James Clear, you read something. And it would be better for you to pause reading and spend a few minutes figuring down some notes of like, how am I going to apply this now? Taking immediate action is the same as teaching somebody. And we know they have proven time and time again that if you learn something, the best way to retain it and actually ingrain it into your DNA is to go and teach it to somebody. So if you actually implement it into your own life, it's like you're teaching yourself. And like you just said, Mark, it is way less expensive of an investment to read someone's book and take the words that they're probably going to say to you anyway in a one-on-one and put it into application. And I've got a big shelf over here of books, and I've given away thousands of books off of my shelves before. When people come over, I tell them to come, hey, pick out some books. I'll take whatever you want. I'm a firm believer in reading, but I'm more of a believer in applying what you read.
I like to say, if you buy a book, you read a book, and you don't take any action as a result of reading that book, you've wasted not only your money, but your time. Do you agree with that?
100%. 100%. Yeah.
Why buy a book if you're not?
Yeah. It sounds good. Somebody told you to read it, and maybe your company's having you read a book. I've had corporate jobs have me read a book before, but I learned at a young age that if without the application, and if you're going to go be an educator and you're in college to go be a teacher or a professor, that you have to know this stuff down to the core. It's just an easier route to go get some W-2 job where you're not applying anything you learned in college for the most part. You're not applying anything from books really, unless you're in like a sales role. But I will tell you that I've worked with plenty of people that are in jobs who read books, and all of a sudden they get promotions because they put it into play. They're going to actually apply what they read. I've met people before that read 5 books a month. I had a friend years ago, and he read a lot of books, and he couldn't figure out why his business wasn't growing. And I told him this one thing: you're not applying what you're reading. If you were, it would be evident. And so instead of reading 5 books a month, he would read 1 and start applying what he was reading.
Interesting. So I want to talk about your kids for a minute. How are you teaching them at such a young age? Because this is the time, no one thinks about this. The time to teach your kids to be productive is when they're young. It's really difficult to teach an old dog new tricks. So how are you teaching your children not to spend all the time on video games or social media? How are you teaching them to be productive so they can grow up to be productive?
Yeah, great question, man. It's just not an option for them. Technology isn't an option for them. They get it every now and then. We have a Nintendo Switch that they get to play Minecraft, and we do have TVs, but it's all controlled from my phone these days. Internet goes off. They can't just turn the TV on and start watching it. I have my wife to thank for this because my wife was a D1 athlete. She was also a competitive bodybuilder. And we knew that we wanted our children to be like us. We wanted to be outside. We wanted to have fun outside. So my kids actually want to be outside. So during the day, they are outside, either in our neighborhood all together. We go to the pool a lot. We're here in Florida, so it's a year-round pool pretty much. And then my wife intentionally takes them to the parks, the local parks and the zoos. And a lot of the places here in Tampa, for instance, they have a buy one day and you get a year pass. The zoo does that, right? So you just pay for one day, and then grandparents will try to ask, what do you want for your kids? Do they want toys, clothes? No, just get us a membership at the aquarium. And so they learn through the environment. And so we spend time with other kids that are, especially during the summer, they get a lot of time around other kids, but we are on a calendar schedule. Like they know first thing in the morning, they still ask for TV every morning, even though we haven't done it. We don't do it. They still try to. They still want to play video. They still ask. And we say, hey, we don't tell them no. We say, hey guys, it's playtime for outside. You can play inside. You can play outside. Those are your options. And I will say that it's a huge difference maker in their brain development, right? We don't need to get into all that on today's podcast, but ultimately technology for children is detrimental to their brain. My kids are thankfully tutored by a woman who sat on the board, national board, and she just said, I'm grateful you're not letting them have tablets, which is like the technology babysitter. And look, as a parent, I get it. Right? I didn't have access to that when I was a kid, but I was just outside. These days, it is so easy to just hand your kid a tablet because we're working, we're providing for the household. Our kids are a lot. It's easy to do that, but it actually is fun for them when they start to use their imagination. And that's how they're going to grow into a productive individual, more than learning from a tablet. So we just protect that dearly. No technology. It's very limited. We do movie nights where we get popcorn out and they just have a lot of fun with that. And oftentimes they argue about the movie they're watching. They all want to watch something different, but we take the punches as they come. And I just wrestle with them a lot. Oh, we don't want to play games right now. Let's wrestle, and it takes some intentionality, even when I'm exhausted and tired and they've kept me up all night.
Oh, I love that. One of the things I heard from Patrick Bet-David not too long ago is something I wish I would have done with my girls, is the currency in his house is pages. So if you say, I want this toy, okay, that's 200 pages. And, I want to go out to the McDonald's. That's 150 pages. And he would assign a book. So they wouldn't go pick out an easy book. He would assign a book and say, okay, you read this book or you read these chapters in this book. Tell me what you learned. That's how you earn these things. And I'm like, when I heard that, I'm like, man, I wish I would have, my kids were so young, because I would use that, because instead of saying, oh, here's $2 for emptying the dishwasher or your allowance, now I'd say, hey, you read this book, tell me what you learn, and then you'll get the thing, because now that's going to build into them the habit of reading. What do you think about that idea?
I have, and I've listened to him say that. I've listened to Patrick David Bett say that before, and I love it. I will say that with boys need to be given, in our opinion and in our professional research, they need to be given time to want to read on their own. And look, I tell you, we've had family pushback. Your kids can't read a book yet, and they're 8 years old. Guess what? I know an individual that was illiterate till he was 26, and now he is ultra wealthy and spoken on stages around the world. To me, it's not about, I'm not trying to keep them illiterate, but we let them have fun with learning, because then they'll like it. That's why we homeschool personally. I know everybody's got their own ways. They want to send their kids to public school, private school, whatever it is. But we have our kids with tutors, and our tutor has said to us, even though some of our families say, hey, your kids can't read yet. Aren't you worried? They need to go to public school. The tutor told us, in her professional opinion, and she's got their credentials, your kids are at genius level. Because we haven't forced school on them. Now, they do have to do schoolwork during the time that we schedule it. Hey, guys, this is schoolwork. It's not playtime. Then we teach them. They're going to appreciate learning because we let them desire it and have fun with it. And one kid wants to do this subject and learn more about science. Another one says, I want to do more math. Then we start to get into that stuff. But at our kids' ages, they're not in a place where I would do that right yet. But I absolutely plan on doing it as they get older. 100%. You want to earn those new shoes? I got one kid that loves shoes like I do. He's, hey, I want to get these new shoes. Dad, can I get those Air Force Ones? Absolutely. There's going to be a point in time where I say, hey, you read this book and tell me what you learn from it, and I will get you those shoes. 100%. I love that.
Before I ask you where people can go to find out more about you and how they can reach out to you, is there anything that we didn't have an opportunity to talk about in the show today you wanted to make sure the listener heard?
No, you know what? I think that this was great. And you hit on a lot of subjects that people just considering getting into business ownership, or even trying to find that new and improved upgraded role at a job. Maybe they want to get promotion. You got to stop making excuses. And so I love that you brought that up. You need to set some goals. Then they need to be SMART goals, right? So specific, measurable, attainable, reviewable, and have a time frame. And go do some Googling, look on YouTube, go do some research, and just set some goals, because you will be pleasantly surprised at what consistent intentionality does. And I'll tell people this all the time. Blunt force effort will never outperform consistent intentionality. You might say, hey, I'm going to start a business. And maybe you have a friend that started a business and they called you. They said, hey, I got started in this business. Come and join me. These people are rich. Look, consistent, persistent effort will outperform the blunt force effort. It is very easy to fall on your face the first time you go off a jump when you're riding a BMX. I grew up skateboarding, and I remember at the beginning of the summer when I first started skateboarding, I'd fall a lot. I couldn't kickflip. By the end of the summer, the skateboard felt like it was my feet. It's just that consistent intentionality will get you where you want to go. So you got to just draw that line in the sand, stop making excuses, and reach out for help. There are so many people online like me. If you look at my LinkedIn, you can look me up, JC, Jonathan Gehrig, on LinkedIn. The recommendations I have are from people who connected with me, and I provided them with free value and changed their life on a call or two and never even charged them a thing. There are plenty of people out there just like that who will give you some value, even if you don't have the quote unquote financial resources, or if you don't think you do, to hire someone. There are resources out there and people who are willing to pour into you. And there's also free events in your town. If you go look them up, there are lots of free networking events, and just go rub shoulders with people who are in the place where you think you want to be. And that might change over time, but it's out there.
Where can people go to find out more about what you're doing in the world and how to connect?
Yeah, absolutely. So find me I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, JC Gehrig across the board. Jonathan Gehrig is my real name, but I go by JC. And just one last thing I'll throw out there's a plug. If anybody's wondering, I am related to Lou Gehrig. He's my fourth cousin. It's a pretty cool thing. So we have baseball running through our veins, and I have multiple websites because I have multiple businesses. So you could just find me on social media and reach out to us if you're if you have a desire or a need, my favorite practice right now is just really helping serve people. So I've got surplusinstitute.com and I've got armorup.io. Those are a couple places you can find me, but social media is the best place. And you can always feel free to text me. If you don't mind, I could drop my cell phone number on here and people can always feel free to text and reach out. It's 561-400-5727.
Wow. Wow, that's impressive. Not too many people do that. JC, thank you so much for being on the show, folks. Don't forget to head on over to my website, mrproductivity.com, and sign up for my email newsletter. Get a free call with me. What's your excuse now? It's free. Come on, mrproductivity.com. We'll be back real soon with a brand new episode. Until then, remember, stay productive and stay positive.